It's only this in front that makes it feel different. Normally it would just be like, oh, I'm just chatting to some people. It looks a bit like a Dalek. Hello everyone, so my name is Debbie Ison and I'm of Tranquil Awakenings Lincoln, and I'm a therapist who is trained in about 10 different therapies, and I'm also a trainer of therapists. And the reason I wanted to come and talk to you today was for something a little bit more unusual that has been presented to me more so over the past year, and that is spirit release work. So I'm always fully booked. I get lots and lots of people coming to work with me with different mental, emotional, physical ailments and issues. And normally they are rooted in something that's happened to them within this lifetime. So it could be a trauma that they've had, an accident, an injury, issues with relationships. And I work very organically using all of my different therapy techniques that are available to me to get the person where they need to be. So they come and work with me and we find out what is it they're moving away from and what is it they're moving towards. And the majority of the time it's something that has taken place in this life. However, occasionally I get somebody coming to work with me that no matter what they've done to shift themselves, no matter who they've worked with, the problem persists. And that is due to something else being within their energy system that doesn't originate from them. A spirit. Somebody that was meant to go to the light when they passed, and unfortunately they haven't for some reason. So during this talk today, I'm going to first explain to you how I came to this, because it wasn't something that I ever chose for myself. I was going to be a very analytical, very sensible therapist that was all very cognitively rooted in scientific understanding. However, the situations that have presented themselves have meant that I've had to be very flexible and adapt the way that I'm working, because you always go with whoever's in front of you. The client is the person you work with. So I'm going to explain how I came to this, and then I'm going to go on from there and explain why this happens and some of the impacts that it causes, and also what I do to help remove things that shouldn't be there. And then I'd like to finish it off by giving you a strategy or two to help keep your energy really strong and in check so that you can go about your life being resilient for your interactions with other people in your day-to-day environment and remain fit and healthy and well. And please feel free to ask me any questions as we go. So, this for me starts back in childhood. And I was always aware of spiritual things. I always saw spirit, and I didn't know what to do with that. And the house I lived in was very scary. So when I was growing up, my brother, who was a baby, would be put in the cot by my mum. The cot sides would go down. There would be things moved around. And it stopped like that for quite a few years until I became a teenager, and then things started to escalate. So I'd gone to bed one night, and I woke up startled in the middle of the night, and there I saw a figure sat on the end of my bed. And logically, I said, I am dreaming. This is not real, and I know that. I'm going to prove it to myself. So I sat there and I grabbed my duvet and I yanked it up. However, the duvet didn't move. And the next thing, this thing stood up and turned towards me. So I ran downstairs, and the next day I convinced myself that was a dream. That didn't happen and it didn't exist. However, it started to happen more frequently. And over time I stopped sleeping, and I had 4 or 5 years of struggling to sleep and becoming increasingly unwell, emotionally and physically. My mood dipped, and also I would struggle to eat. Now, moving on a few years, I went to university. And at that point I was like, la la la, can't see you, can't hear you, you don't exist. And what was fascinating was my health improved dramatically. So I'd been having physiotherapy appointments, and they were really struggling to get any improvement from me. Within a month of being at university and sleeping and eating well and feeling better, that ailment had gone and I was discharged. So I went my life for quite a few years after that, ignoring anything like that. I'm not spiritual, I don't believe in anything like that. I'm very rooted in science and logic. And that was fine until I had my little boy. And we had something in our house which started targeting him. He stopped sleeping and it became a bit scary. And I still didn't know what to do with that because I was just Debbie, the primary school teacher with 2 small children. And luckily for me, I had a reflexologist that used to come and work with me for fertility issues and endometriosis. And she said, do you mind if I just check out the energies in your house and all of your energies? And I thought, I don't know what this crazy woman's on about, but sure. So she checked the energies out in the house and she sorted the issue. But I still did not want anything to do with that. However, I had a few weeks to calm down and she said to me, look, Debbie, you've always been aware of this sort of thing. Isn't it time you started facing it? I was like, I suppose so. So she taught me the very basics of how to ground myself, how to protect my energy. And she started inviting me to her therapist networking meetings, and I would sit there and think, well, why am I here? I'm not a therapist. I'm a primary school teacher. And it was from that I decided I wanted to be a therapist. It was reflexology, the reflexologists, and the stories they used to tell about the way they help people were so inspirational. So then, when I got the opportunity a few years later, I retrained and became a therapist. And it all started off very normally for a long time. And I love what I do. If I get somebody in front of me and I don't know how to sort it, I will study, I will train, I will speak to experts all over the world until I know a way to deal with that. And this was how it was going perfectly fine until one day last year, somebody presented themselves to me who became very angry, and a different voice came out of their mouth. Not in hypnosis, out of hypnosis. And I was presented with a situation that I was in the therapy room. I was on my own with this person. What do I do to keep myself safe? And I had a bit of a freak out again. I was like, I don't like this. Make it go away. So after that had happened, I sat down and I said to the universe, God, whatever you want to describe it, do not ever put me in that position again. That is not for me. And it was fine for a little while. And then there'd been, luckily for me, a lady that I'd helped at a similar sort of time to that traumatic experience in my therapy room. And she'd had something in her property and attached to her. And I'd sort of removed that without particularly being consciously aware of what I was doing. I just wanted to help her in any way I could. And she sent me a message a few months later saying, I just want to let you know you've transformed my life. She said, my son who was suicidal has now got a job. My daughter is now communicating with me. My ailments have improved. My animals are healthy. Everything has transformed. And so I sat down once again and I said, okay, universe, if this is how I'm meant to serve other people, I'm willing to do this, providing you never give me anything beyond what I can handle. And within a few hours, all of a sudden the floodgates opened. So I'm still working with a lot of people with issues rooted in this life, but occasionally I'm getting somebody that has got something else attached to them, a soul that hasn't gone when it's meant to. And that can happen for lots of different reasons. Sometimes it can be when that person's come to the end of their life, they feel that they've got some sort of unfinished business, that they were meant to fulfill their life's purpose or achieve something and it didn't happen. So they stick around. Other times it might be that they feel very angry and resentful that something didn't happen or go to plan. So an example of this is when my granddad was dying in the hospice. We were sat there one night and my mum said to me, is there a lady in spirit telling me to get out of the chair? So I had a look and I said, yeah, there is. She's like, well, is it a relative? No. So I asked this lady, well, what is it you want? And she said that in her life, she'd been so bitter and so angry that she'd pushed all of her family away. So when she was in the hospice, she died alone. So when it was her time to go into the light and move on to her next existence, she wasn't going. I'm not moving. Nobody's been to see me. I'm stopping here. And after a while, she realised that wasn't very fulfilling, but she was stuck. So what she was basically trying to do is she was trying to hijack other people's deaths, sort of getting into their energy field and just like waiting, like when they go and the light comes for them, maybe I can go instead. And she was there with my granddad, and I was like, you can't do that, that's not how it works. So I've no idea what my mum thought to this, because it seemed so far out there to me. So I sat there all of a sudden providing therapy to this deceased lady. And I said, you don't need anyone else's light to take you, you can have your own, you just need to get rid of your fear. So I worked with her in the same way I would a living client, and off she went to the light. Now, there's other times a being might stay because perhaps they want to be near a loved one, or perhaps they don't even know they've died. So I had one lady that was attached to this lady that came to see me, and this lady had been having all sorts of digestive issues. And so I asked what was going on, and if it was part of her energy. And all of a sudden this lovely voice came from this lady. Where am I? Where am I? What's going on? I was like, okay, who are you? And she was like, I'm Rose. Why am I here? Who are you? And I was like, okay, I want you to just go back to your life. What's the last thing you can remember? She said, I was laid in my bed next to my husband Albert, and I fell asleep. So I just said to explain to her, look, you passed away, and for whatever reason you've come into this person's energy. Perhaps it felt safe for you, but it's not where you're meant to be. And she went into the light, and she was delighted because her husband came for her and they went off together. And what was even more remarkable was instantly, this lady's digestive issue that she'd had for the last 20 years cleared itself up. It wasn't ever hers. It belonged to the soul that had left its body but was still carrying around that energy. Other times they might stick around because they just like it here, or even that they've been told that something bad's going to happen to them. They're going to go to hell. When they die, there's no place for them. So when somebody comes to work with me and we find out that this is the root cause of their issues, obviously I always work from a client-centred way that I work with the client, but in order to help a person shift whatever's with them, I need to first give therapy to the soul or beings that have attached themselves, because there's a reason why they're there, and they just need help just like anybody else. So a lot of the time it's taking them back to their lives and finding the trauma or the issues that have gone on in their lives and helping them to release it so that they can then go off and I can do the work with the client in front of me. And it's fascinating. So how does this end up happening? Why do people get these attachments? There could be lots of reasons. Sometimes it can be just that their energy is so beautiful and bright, it's like a beacon. And a soul that's perhaps a bit lost or a bit disorientated can draw itself in, and it's safe and it's comfortable. Other times it might be that they see a child or somebody being bullied or being treated unkindly, and they go in to help, to give them the strength and courage that they don't have. Other times it might be that there's a similar personality trait or something they admire. Whereas other times it might be that the person's had trauma within their lives or some sort of addiction or illness that has left their energy weak, which has just allowed something to take that opportunity to stay with them. However, when it happens, even if the soul that's with them is there for the best intentions, after a time it starts to drain the person's energy. Because that being hasn't got a physical body, it starts to use the energy of the person it's with. So it leaves them depleted and they start to get physical ailments. They might also get the physical ailments of the spirit that's with them, that they had in life. And the problem is also, once the spirit is in the energy field, it's very hard for them to get out. So it's almost like they become a prisoner and they can't carry on their own spiritual journey. So my work is to provide that therapy so that they can all go and do what they need to do and just be happy and healthy. So has anyone got any questions so far?
It's interesting because I looked at the shamanic healing course, and they see mental illness or mental poor health as an imbalance between the spirits when they talk to you.
Yeah, and I certainly think that is the case some of the time. Of course, we do have mental illness as well because there's chemical imbalances in the brain and there's trauma and things that have happened in this life. But I've become increasingly open that it can be something spiritual going on. Sometimes it's a disconnect with the spiritual self and the physical self, whereas other times it can be things that have been attracted in. And it's been fascinating. I've had people that have come to me that souls have attached to them from birth or very young age, because they don't want to go. They're frightened. What's going to happen to me when I go into the light? Am I going to be safe? Am I going to be sent to hell? Or they've come along and they're sort of living life through this person. And they think they're doing good a lot of the time, but actually they start to cause problems both for themselves and the living host. So they do need to be moved on. But it's always done with love and compassion. Just like any client that's in front of you, you have to come from a place of love. So it's never, you need to leave and you need to do this, because it's not going to work either. And both parties have to be in agreement. So quite a lot of the time, on some level, the host, the person that's got them, might be benefiting from them being there. It might give them confidence or safety or protection. So both parties need to have that free will to say, actually, this relationship needs to come to an end because it's no longer healthy and it's causing problems. And what I found even more fascinating is when this has happened, it's not necessarily people that are even open to this idea. It's come a little bit out of the blue for them and for me as well. So I never quite know what I'm going to get in my therapy room nowadays. So sometimes it might be a straightforward phobia, other times it might be a trauma, sometimes a past life. And then on occasions, this experience where I need to help a soul or souls release and go on their way. I mean, I had one girl recently that had become very suicidal, and it had just happened overnight. And so I did everything I could with her and we weren't making progress. So I thought, I'm going to have to ask, is there anything that's in your energy field that's not part of your own energy? And we got a yes. And actually what we found was this girl that had killed herself in some school toilets because she was being badly bullied, and she'd attached to this girl, she'd found her somehow, and it was safe, and this girl had a very kind, big, generous heart, and she felt that she belonged somewhere. But what she also brought with her was those suicidal feelings. So this girl's mental and emotional health deteriorated. So as soon as we helped that soul go off into the light, the girl just recovered. All this suicidal thoughts that she'd been having, she wasn't able to go to school, she just felt normal and well again. And I find that absolutely incredible. Each time it blows me away, and it sort of feels beyond comprehension and belief even to me. But I just go with it and see whatever's presented and deal with it the best way I can. Has anyone got anything else they'd like to ask?
Do children who have their friends, like their little friends that they see and nobody else can see, at what marker, Debbie, do you think the children lose that little insight into?
So I think children from being born have this innate ability to see beyond the five senses. They've got those subtle senses. And I think over time, probably from about 5 years old, they start to lose that. Probably when they go into formal education, that they're told that this is the way of the world, and we get children to conform to our way of thinking. And they sort of start to lose that spark, and it disappears over a period of time. Sometimes it stays with children, other times it disappears. So with my children, I've always been very open with them that if they've ever had anything to say to me, no matter how strange it is, if they've got an invisible friend, I'll always check, is it their imagination or is there somebody there that's sort of interacting with them, and are they okay? So I think my children will probably always have that open to them if that's what they want, because it's an open dialogue and discussion in our house. Whereas lots of people I know, if their children say something like that, stop talking rubbish, you're talking nonsense. How could you believe in something like that? And so that spark gets extinguished over time. And I think that's a real shame, because I think we're so remarkable.
Do you think, though, that some of the greatest creators, people like Steve Jobs and people like that, do you think that they sometimes continue throughout their life to have that ability?
I think so, most definitely. And I don't know what happens individual to individual as to what can override that, where they can have that spark or that inspiration or that creativity. And I think we're very fortunate that we have those people that are connected on that level. And sometimes people can always have it, and other times it can be they have it when they're a child, and then they sort of drift away from it, almost like I did. But then something profound or significant can happen in their lives to reconnect them. And I think that's part of like where we do this Wellbeing show. We're looking at health and well-being on all levels: mental, emotional, physical, social, energetic and spiritual. And it's allowing people to get in touch with their innate gifts and abilities to be well. And that's what I think is really important about this work. everybody here is so committed and so passionate to what they do. And it's about getting people in a better state than where they started off. And when I'm doing this work, what I always come back to is, if you're working on yourself to be the best version of yourself that you can be, that's how you best contribute and serve others. And that's how you keep yourself safe in all areas of your life, whether it's your interactions with your boss at work, or whether it's in your relationships, or whether it is something bigger, that the spiritual elements that can attach to you. It's always look back on yourself. What do I need to heal? What do I need to learn? How can I grow? Okay.
So if you have somebody who is wandering through their lives and they seem to have second sight, or they seem to be connected to, should we say, spiritual beings.
Yes.
Should they automatically dismiss that as being an illness, or should they research it deeper?
Absolutely not. So it needs to be researched deeper, because I think this is something that's part of us. What I'm saying as I talk is there's a distinction between, lots of people I know, including myself, work with spirit guides. We have beings that are beyond this physical self, that work with us, that help us and that support us, and that help us to grow spiritually and use our spiritual gifts. However, the distinction is those beings don't ever force themselves upon us. They always let us have our free will and our choice. They might give us guidance, but if we go on the wrong path, they'll just be there to stand back and support you and hope to get you on the wrong path. But they don't go into your energy and to start taking your energy or influencing you. So this is where discernment comes in, your own discernment. And it's hard sometimes, because something that's not meant to be there can feel very familiar. And just like in a normal abusive relationship, you might have a horrible relationship and you know parts of it are horrible, but then there's also, it gives you that love, it gives you that support, it gives you that companionship in some way. It's the same with these relationships. When they become unhealthy, or when they start draining you or making you poorly, then that's the time when you need to think, do I need this anymore? So if something does attach, quite often it might just start by doing something like making you behave a little bit impulsively or strangely, out of character. So you think, oh, why did I do that? And then over time it starts to mould you more and more, so that perhaps you start to take on physical ailments, or you feel more unsettled. And then sometimes it will stay there, whereas at other times it could then start using your body to get its own gains. And that's what you don't want.
So if you have a situation where somebody who is an academic, I mean, it's evident, anybody who listens to you talk, that you're very eloquent, you're a highly educated woman. How do you relate to somebody who's sceptic? How do you relate to them about your beliefs and the, if you like, the funnel or the filter, which is your academic qualification? How do you suggest to them that it's perfectly okay as an academic to have these thoughts and ideas?
Well, I say I actually can completely relate, because I'm academic and I'm sceptical, and everything I do, I still question it, I still challenge it, I still look for evidence-based research. What I also say to those people is, that's okay, that's where you're at, this is where I'm at, and as long as I'm not harming anybody else, as long as I'm helping them, I'll get the people I need to help and support me, and I can support them. And it's a mutual thing. We all help each other to learn and grow. You're in a different place. If they genuinely want to engage in a conversation, I will explain things that I've witnessed and I've seen, and I will start to give them evidence bases of things like the energy system that happens in the body. Sometimes people are very willing to listen and be open. Other times people are just dismissive, and I just say, I wish you well, and I'm really happy that that's the path you're on and you're settled. If they're willing to challenge their own mindset, which really that's what science is about, that's the true meaning of science and academia. It's that exploration, it's that discovery of, we know this now, but what more can we learn? And it's like things like, in the human body, for example, it was only 5 or 6 years ago a new organ was discovered in the stomach. Leonardo da Vinci discovered that 400 years ago, had documented it and had been dismissed. And you think, right, we've cut up so many bodies, there's been so many autopsies, so many operations, and it's only 5 or 6 years ago we were discovering a new organ, and more have been found since. What about the rest of the planet, the physical stuff? What don't we know about what's here? Never mind what's beyond that.
So do you think that the human only scratching the surface of their ability.
Most definitely. I think we've got so many innate qualities within us, so many different gifts, and I think that's what I find amazing coming to somewhere like this, because people are starting to open up those different gifts and abilities and to be able to share them and be in service to each other. And I just think there's so much more we could know, and that we've got so much potential that we don't know how to use.
Well, let's come back to Steve Jobs, a man everybody knows about, and we're literally sitting in front of one of the creations at this moment in time that's really giving us the ability to talk to many thousands of people, potentially all over the world. But very few people don't realise that he was quite a spiritual man. He wandered India for quite a number of years. He walked out of his university because he wanted to do other things. Do you think that spiritual and that deep meditation and the way that he lived and his insular life, do you think that actually probably helped him with his creativity with the company called Apple?
Absolutely, because it's allowing, when you connect in with those things, it allows you to be the best version of yourself that you can be. It allows you to accept what is, but it also gives you a thirst to know more and learn more and discover more. And I tend to find when I'm in resonance, so when everything is in harmony within me, that's when I really get those real sparks of creativity and passion, and everything seems to flow. So it makes sense that if somebody like him was very spiritual, that's going to allow that intellect to combine with that creativity to create something remarkable.
So can you give us a guide how we could perhaps connect our spiritual creativity? How would we go about doing that?
So I think firstly you need to obviously make sure that you're centred within your body, and energetic hygiene I think is important. So if you're connecting with your spirituality, you also need to keep yourself fit and well. And one of the things that I use for that, it's TFT, thought field therapy, and that's taught by Janet Thompson. She's brilliant. And she does a little triangle sequence. So every day it's tapping on different acupressure points to get your energy system fit and well. So I start that every day. So it's tapping on the side of your hand, then tapping on your index finger, tapping your collarbone, then you put your tongue on the roof of your mouth and tap under your nose, then tap your chin, and then tongue back up and tap under your nose. Then your other index finger, and then the side of your hand. So that is activating all the acupressure points in your body. And what you then do is you then sweep the energy across your body, and this is great as well for like connecting different parts of your brain. But this allows the energy to flow, because energy should spiral around the body. But because we're very left-brained thinking in our society, quite often the energy can end up flowing up and down, so it can leave weaknesses. So you do that and then put some positive energy into your heart each day. And it just takes a minute or two when you wake up. Once you've done that, I would say if you're going to do spiritual-based work, it's a great idea to ground yourself, just to make sure you're back in the present so that you can connect, but also you stay rooted here. And that's really important, especially for somebody like me that can get very in the head and away with the fairies almost, that I need to be back here in the present so that I can work through day-to-day life. So how I ground myself is I imagine I've got roots coming from my feet and they go down into the earth and they anchor me here. Once I've done that, I will then practice meditation. I find meditation is so powerful, getting yourself into that relaxed state and just allowing yourself to go wherever you need to go to open up. The other things I'd say is really useful is conversation. I tend to think when you're on a spiritual path, I think for everybody there are signs and symbols all around us. It might be that somebody presents themselves to have an interesting conversation with us. It might be we end up reading a magazine article. It might be that we see a white feather floating down in front of us. It's starting to notice the signs all around us that the universe presents to let us know we're on the right path. And it's when those things feel right, using that discernment, that we can then follow it and start to develop our spirituality more and more.
Debbie, in the last 5 minutes, can I put you on the spot here?
Please do.
We are going through a transitional period now where I don't think there's very much doubt that we're going to start to return to people coming together, people being away from 14 months or so of separation, distancing. There's going to be quite a way of a lot of people going to have to learn new ways to
definitely.
So could you spend just last few minutes giving people guidance of how they're going to readjust?
So I think the first thing is to take notice of what's going on in your body and in your mind. So if there's any different situations that start to make you feel nervous or anxious, where am I feeling that in my body and what's it about? The first thing is identifying there's a problem to then help you move forward to sort it out. From there, you then need to start working out, okay, is it something that I can work on myself? It might be doing something like journaling, writing a letter, talking to a friend, starting to take yourself out and about more. Or it might be that you need some more specialised help and support. And there are a lot of people I'm seeing at the moment that have been confident within their lives. They've done all sorts of remarkable things, and yet having this time in isolation has completely changed their world, and they feel anxious to go out and they're struggling. So they need somebody like me, and there's lots of amazing therapists out there to help guide them and get them back on track. And it's remembering that there's no sort of weakness in that. We've gone through this global change where it just happened to us. It was a shock. I mean, I don't know how anyone else experienced it, but one day I was busy working, and all of a sudden I was told my kids were going to be off with me for 3 weeks, and like 6 months later they were going back to school. So it's been life-changing for everybody. So there's going to be trauma attached. So it's okay if you don't know how to deal with that yourself. Go and get some help and support from somebody who does. Other things, start following your passions and your interests. I think what a lot of people have found during this time is they've realised they've been pushing themselves in the society we had before, and they've been made to stop. And that has brought up stuff for them. So sometimes the trauma or the pain that they're feeling isn't even from this situation. It's something that's historic. But they haven't had to face it because there's been the busyness of life to cover it up. So it's recognising, okay, if this stuff's coming forward, it isn't my enemy, it's not coming to harm me. It's my body and mind saying, this is a problem, you really need to address this now. And as soon as you start to recognise it like that, you can start to see it as it's your friend. But you don't need it. It's a friend. It's giving you the information and advice, and it can go on its way now. But you can use that to help you learn and grow and get where you need to be.
So would you like to give the audience and everybody a little bit about how they can find you before you want?
So how you can find me, so I've got a website and a Facebook page. It's www.tranquil-awakenings.co.uk, and just send me an email, send me a message, give me a call, and I'll do my best to help anyone that needs it. And I've also got a YouTube channel where I'm putting more and more self-help techniques as well, for those people that have got just a bit of something that they need to sort out, but they're able to do it themselves. So yeah, please also tune into that, and I'll keep giving you lots of different suggestions as to how you can help yourself and the people in your life.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.